Alright guys, and welcome back to the channel. My name is DFree, and for today's video we're going to be talking about the power creep in Dragon Ball Legends and where the game has gone versus where it's probably going. So this is really a part 2 continuation of a video I did earlier today. If you didn't see it, check it out. The link is down below. That video started off as being a discussion point on the Great Saiyaman 1 and 2 Zenkais, but in the latter second half of the video it transitions into multiple topics, one of which is kind of the state of Zenkai awakening in this game and the fact that they're not even the problem in this game anymore. They haven't been the problem in this game for actually quite a while, and kind of where the Zenkais or the problem talk even came from in the first place. But what I will say is to kind of jump into this discussion point, jumping off of the back of that one, is we're going to start with talking about kind of where this all kind of started. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hit the thumbs up and subscribe. Today's video like goal is going to be 1,000. Again, check out part 1, but basically if you haven't seen it, this is part 2. It wasn't intended to be, but it kind of is now. So in that previous video, one thing I talked about was, like I said, the state of Zenkais, and really the game had to go in a direction where power creep increased exponentially because if you remember back, a lot of people were complaining characters weren't good enough. The Zenkais were too powerful, LFs weren't good enough, especially at the low star rates, which consequently led into multiple things that are actually pretty good, like the increase of Z power that we still have, which I didn't think we would have. Thinking back, after Legends Festival, they gave us a watered down version of it, but it's still way better than anything prior with the 2 times rates and stuff like that. So I didn't think we'd keep that. That's the baseline now, and I didn't think ×3 would return. It wasn't planned to return. It wasn't supposed to return. But speaking of which, on that topic, for the anniversary, they've got to bring it back, don't they? Because they've upped the ante already. They've got to bring it back, I feel like. Anyways, so side tangent there. But yeah, basically Zenkais were too powerful, LFs were too hard to get at high star levels, and even then they weren't able to compete with some of the tippy top end Zenkais like Android 18, like Gohan. There are a few others like some of those SS3s, and largely Zenkais lately have been very normalized. They become free, which it also almost coincides. Like, okay, we can go further back to before they even became free, when they got discounted. If you're new to the game or if you didn't know, Zenkais used to cost 21,000 or so on average CC to Zenkai Awaken. Yeah, ridiculous. Back then, though, they were the undisputed best characters in the game. We had only 3 or 4 of them, but they were the best characters in the game because they were so new, so powerful, had extra unique abilities, had this Zenkai ability thing, which is crazy. And then I'm like, oh yeah, let me do Zenkai Awaken videos and like Zenkai buffed videos and stuff like that. And that turns into a whole thing on YouTube. I didn't think I would adapt the way it would, but it's funny. It is what it is because I did something similar with Dokkan and showcases, and it's like, oh, that turned into a really big thing. So just kind of pat myself on the back for those things. It's fun. Anyways, side tangent again. But yeah, they used to cost 21,000, right? So we take a look back, and that's where it is. And then if we extend out to when the Red Trunks got his Zenkai, and they changed to being about 7,000, that's really when they started being bad. I remember he came out, and then Purple Vegeta got a Zenkai, and I think Android 16, he was good, but then like there's another Zenkai after that. It's like, oh wow, they lowered the cost of them and they made them normalized. They made them a lot, weaker and not as good, which makes sense. But that was the start of the beginning of the end for Zenkai's dominance on the game. But the problem is there was still this massive overshadowing character in the Red Gohan, who's not on my page anyway. But the Red Gohan, who was so powerful and so good that it didn't matter what they dropped in the game for literally a year. He might have had the longest stranglehold in this game because there were characters like Vegito Blue, there were characters like Purple Broly, there was in the very beginning like IT Goku and Green Bardock. There have always been, really honestly, characters that have controlled this game. Gohan had it for a year. with none of the new characters really coming close if they weren't a Zenkai or whatever. Where is this Gohan? Anyways, so Red LF Gohan there, and that led to, oh, you can't drop any more hybrids because hybrids are such a big problem, which they tried to tiptoe around that, tried not to drop hybrid characters, or if they did drop hybrids, they wouldn't buff hybrids, do wonky things like that. It even got so bad as to where this Trunks comes out and he's at a point where they don't even give him the utility to be ran on hybrid teams. He's got to be ran on, technically he can be ran on hybrids with other Trunkses, but you get the point. He's got to be around Future or Vegeta family. He can't be around Gohans in particular unless they're the Future Gohan. So like they got to the point where they started restricting kits, and then all of a sudden after that the doors are blown open because they say, okay, and there have still been a few that come out with restrictions, right, like Bardock, but for the most part pretty much all the characters we've been getting have been ridiculous. And the funny thing is, it's not even only LFs or Ultras, because they also are in this discussion. It's not even only them, it's the 1% characters. These characters have been really, really powerful that we've been getting lately. There are some that are kind of duds that aren't as powerful, but for the most part, I feel like the overall power level of the characters that have come out has risen exponentially, and it all kind of started off with the Zenkai's dominance on the game, which if you're a game dev, you can't have something like that where a couple-year-old character is still the best character in your game, because it gets to the point, like I said, where people are questioning even why are we even summoning or putting money into this game, right? Why are you even doing it? And then also they even dropped other characters that were supposed to be kind of powerhouses but were underwhelming, like SS4 Gogeta, to the point where they had to literally give them a hot fix by giving them a platinum equip, things like that. And they introduced more new mechanics to try to get away from the fact that Gohan as a character didn't have the utility that some of these other characters are coming out with, like sealing all the time or knockbacks and endurance. They introduced revive mechanics. It comes out on a very powerful character as well, things like that. But you can't have that character dominate your game for so long. So, like I said, it really extended out to where these characters have just all been coming out, and it really reached a fever pitch with these Ultras, man. And this was always going to be the case, I feel. I think, regardless of Gohan, Ultras are always going to be ridiculously powerful in this game, because it's the next level up, right? And it's like there's like this partial rarity increase from Sparking to Legends Limited, but at the end of the day, the Legends Limiteds are not a actual rarity increase. They do treat it like it because the rates go down, but they're just limited Sparkings, right? But we had a literal upgrade, right? And this is shown even in things like the Z power difference. You notice Heroes to EX to Sparking to Ultra all drop different amounts of Z power, where again, there's no break like that between Legends Limited or non. So Ultras are always going to be very powerful, and you knew they would be powerful because they started telling us, like I believe when this dude came out, they started telling us a year in advance almost, hey, just so you know, we're going to be dropping summonable Ultras. It's not going to stay free. They gave us a few free ones. We get the next one. Hey, we're going to be dropping summonable Ultras. This will be the last free Ultra for a while because, you know, we're going to be dropping summonable Ultras. And it's like, okay, we get it, but like, we didn't actually get it. We didn't actually get it. I mean, I started talking about how, again, there have been always characters over the years that have dominated this game, but Gohan was so powerful because just raw damage, right? And then if he was last man, he'd obliterate you. The only real utility he had, like, he has crazy things like support, which is like very powerful. He has his supporting effects like what, 60% and 40% for no reason. It's just extremely powerful. But he has, the main utility is the neutrality, right? But then we get characters like this guy who do everything. This guy has like everything in his kit except for revive / endurance. He's got everything else. He's got locks. He's got neutrality. He's the first character that gets a second freaking ultimate. Like that's where this game went, right? But it's not only this, right? Around this same time, the game went to another level too. I had always wanted to see actual duo characters, and they dropped them, right? Now, the other duos that have come out are almost carbon copies with some different changes, like, you know, Gohan and Trunks, they draw the greens and blues, a little bit different. But the core mechanics are the same with just the the change of the typing, the reverse typing. I don't think that'll always be the case for every tag. There's no way they'll do that. But what I do think is, with obviously with the androids having their own playstyle a little bit too, with the constant endurance nullification, which is crazy, but we can reach another level with these new mechanics coming out, and this is all in an effort to up the ante. Because again, as a game dev for this type of game, what are people spending money for, summoning for, if everything you're putting out is garbage, mid, etc., you know, or just not up to par? If you can't put some of these characters in the immediate top tiers, you know, the top 15 characters in the game or whatever on release, if they're supposed to be a hype release, then they're just underperforming, they're underwhelming by most people's assessment. So that's kind of what they had to do. And I understand it, I respect it. I don't love it though, because leading into the next portion of Legends' lifespan, I'm really curious as to what they're going to do. we know a couple of things. First and foremost, we know that Zenkais are no longer the pinnacle of this game. People complained for the better part of 2 years, and they got what they finally wanted. Zenkais are free, which is what they wanted in the first place, which is fair, because their baseline argument was, hey, Dokkan does Zenkais. I always said it was different. It's largely the same because the core idea is the same, but the design choice was different. But nonetheless, Dokkan got it free. We get it free. Perfect. I love it. Love it. I'm not mad at that. But the power level went down so much that they said, okay, that coupled with the fact people were complaining about how powerful Zenkais were in the relation to the rest of the game, which again, valid argument. Why am I summoning for this 2-star character? Which again led to also, hey, maybe we'll actually increase not only the power level, but the actual drops of the characters, the Z power and stuff, which is a good change, a very good change. Coupled with, again, the free Zenkais is also a good change. But you see, so some of these things change for the better of the game, but transitioning out, I mean, just looking at the sheer quality of character, it seems like more and more characters are coming out with some of these combinations of these best mechanics to where if you just have one, you're not able to compete. And if you have a restricted form of some mechanics, like let's look at Vegeta Blue, for example, the 2-year headliner. He still has some stuff in his kit that aged really well, like the forced draw of cards, the strikes he gets, the playstyle versus the enemies. Those things are they're good utility. He still has one of the hardest hitting ultimates in the game. He's 2 years old, okay? And he's got an old, outdated version of this mechanic where these characters can nullify covers. He's got it exclusively on what? It's on the ultimate, right? Exclusively on the ultimate. Yeah, nullify is here for 3 counts. Ooh, boy. Like, that's not bad. Don't get me wrong. But, like, that was designed for a character like Bojack, who was always covering into everything. His cover's still very powerful, obviously. But, like, that mechanic is garbage compared to Ultra Gogeta here, who can just pick that mechanic up on a whim, on a green card. Like, and there are characters that enter with it, things like that. Like, that mechanic is nowhere near the same. So if you're an older character with some of these mechanics, or an outdated version of that, or just a flat out just bad character, and I also didn't talk about the fact they added things like the gauges to just, you know, increase characters, you're gonna really have a tough time. So going forward, I do think there are some Zenkais that will have potential. Like, for example, speaking of the gauges, like Ultra Instinct, when he gets his Zenkai, which may be sooner than later based on what the game's doing, I don't know, but there are characters that just have such innate potential that it's going to be extremely hard to mess them up. Now, the community needs to not confuse that the fact these characters probably get minor tweaks, like Merge Zamasu did, for example, with being bad. Just because they get minor tweaks doesn't mean they're bad. Now, there are other characters that get minor tweaks, like Blue Piccolo, his Zenkai, very minor tweaks. But the thing about some of these Zenkais that I always need to... okay, let me say this. I talked him down as not being the pinnacle of the game, but that doesn't mean bad, okay? Like, people say these Zenkais are bad, they're mid, they're blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, you have to understand a couple of things. They have such insanely otherworldly high stats coupled with their Zenkai abilities that these characters are extremely powerful in relation to the average star level on a lot of players' characters. Like, a lot of players maybe have 4, 5, 6 stars on characters, even with the increased drops and stuff like that. You still have to get lucky. You've got to be pulling, especially around this time. Characters that come out right now, like Gamma 1 and 2. If you ever see those characters, they're going to probably be low stars, blah, blah. So, like, they're extremely powerful, even if they don't have the utility. So that in and of itself is part of the reason why they don't get some of that stuff like crazy. And then 2, they're not designed to be bench buffers. Like Super Saiyan God Vegeta coming out after Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta. He wasn't designed to come out and bench buff that guy. What he was he came out as a secondary option for the same teams for a limited, harder to pull option, right? Same thing with Android 13 and the tag androids. It's the exact same design choice where you have a watered down, not as good version, but nonetheless a still viable, well, I guess air quotes viable, more recent modern option to plug into these teams to run some of the same teams. That's the idea, the design choice. So that's what these Zenkais are more or less for now. They're secondary options, and that's probably what they should have always been. Secondary options for the premium summonable characters, but the summonable characters like this guy that have insane potential or a very high baseline can still be very good. Now, the thing that I want to kind of end on and leave you guys with as food for thought is for the next year of this game. I think it'll take a while to get here. It might not even be until we get to like the 5-year anniversary or 5.5 years where it really gets to this level. But like, what is this game going to look like when we've got 3, 4, 5, 6 ultras on the team. Now we could do that, but summonable ones, because the free ones don't even compare to the summonable ones. It's not even close. What does the game look like? What does the game look like when you've got 3, 4, 5? You know, we can do 3, right? But what if we get 4, 5, 6 Legends Limited or sparking rarity, cutting them shy with the EX, but like sparking rarity tag characters, right? What does this game really look like? And not even just with those types of, you know, rarities or mechanics, but like you saw what the game turned into when you started being able to run 3 endurance characters on the team. You saw what the game turned into. It got very hard to play. That's why the mechanics like nullify endurance started popping up more on every freaking character, because they always have this issue, and this is design choice, where they up the ante so much, create a problem, they have to sell you a solution, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's where this game has gone. It's almost like a cat and mouse thing, where this game has constantly had to have these cycles throughout its lifespan where they introduce something and they have to find a way to backtrack it, right? And I think some of that, again, is on purpose, because they can sell you something easier if they tell you, hey, this will fix your problem, right? So that's just business. But I'm curious what you guys think about what I was saying about the progression of this game, the power level of these characters. It's getting to a point where it feels like almost every character does everything. I called Ultra Gogeta the most hand-holdy character in the game, right? I think the usage of characters, the ease of use versus skill level on these characters has changed dramatically. And there are still characters that require, and obviously every character in the game, if you're a good player, you'll play better with them than the average player. It is what it is. But some of them do things for you. You know, like I said, Ultra Gogeta just gives you everything. Goku has a little bit more. Goku, like, you have to manage him a little more to really get the best out of him, just because the gauge is so powerful with the constant Vanish Restoration. But he also gives you freaking everything. The androids give you everything. These characters play the game for you at this point, right? So I'm curious. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hit the thumbs up and subscribe. Like I said, check out the first video. Just fun to talk about the history of Legends as we approach the 4 years of the game. Have an awesome day, guys, and take it easy.